What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to X-Men Inferno. And now we pick up with good old Uncanny X-Men once again. Now, we're going to cover Uncanny X-Men number 235 all the way up to 238. And this gives us the first appearance of Genosha. If you know your X-Men comics, you know how important this island becomes in the world of X-Men. Now, the early pages of this story arc really gives us an idea of how bad Genosha is when it comes towards mutants, because we do pick up with a young mutant who is currently trying to get away from a group of people better known as the magistrates. Now, when it comes to this young mutant, the reason why he is trying to get away is not just because they're being mistreated, the mutants, but also because he has a young baby boy and he wants to make sure the boy is able to live a better life somewhere else in the world rather than on Genosha. Now, the young mutant, he is able to reach the airport and he is able to smuggle the baby onto an airplane that is about to leave. But unfortunately, he knows he has no choice but to leave the baby behind on the plane to give the child the chance to fly off into a better life, while he tries his best to hold back the magistrate. And so he does that. And unfortunately, the mutant is put down. Now, a couple of days later, we do pick up with a group of characters known as the Press Gang. Now, when it comes to the Press Gang, their main goal is to help the Genosha government capture mutants who may have escaped or who possibly belong in Genosha. There is a huge difference there because Press Gang, their main goal right now is to find the baby that was able to escape, but they also have another target, and that would be Jennifer Ransom. Now, Jennifer is going to reappear a lot in X-Men comics, but when it comes to Jennifer, there is a story behind her that I will explain more later on in this video, but apparently she does belong back in Genosha. Now, when it comes to Jennifer, she is a nurse and she believes that she is responding to a call that somebody needs help. And so she's flying over there. Now, her pilot is Madeline Pryor. Now, this is going to be the way the X-Men are going to learn what is exactly happening over in Genosha for mutants. But either way, once you do have the two ladies land over in the airport to see the supposed patient, they get ambushed by Press Gang, and then out of nowhere, both ladies are teleported straight over to Genosha. Now, real quick, before they were teleported, Madeline Pryor, well, because she's not a mutant, they're kind of wondering, there's something off about her. Their readings are off on her. But they said she's not a mutant, she's something else. But either way, they still grab her and send her over to Genosha. And so because Madeline Pryor has not contacted the X-Men in a while, you had Rogue and Wolverine and a few other members of the X-Men head over to where she was last seen at to do some detective work. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to Wolverine, he's unable to figure out what exactly happened to Madeline and also Jennifer because they were teleported straight over to Genosha. But he was able to pick up the scent of, well, Press Gang. Now, this is also going to begin the process of Havoc falling in love with Madeline Pryor. Let me explain here, guys, because you have Havoc showing so much concern for what happened to Madeline more than the rest of the team. And that's kind of crazy because she's still the wife of his brother, Cyclops. But apparently he does not care at all. His main goal is to find her, and well, we already know what he wants to do with her. But either way, he tells the team, listen, there was another plane that was nearby that area who had just flew over to the airport in Sydney, Australia. And so the team heads over there. Now, once you have the X-Men arrive in Sydney, you then have Rogue and Wolverine begin the process of trying to continue to follow the scent of the Press Gang. Now, there's something else I should mention. That Press Gang is actually a group of mutants with their own free will decided to help out the Genosha government to go after other mutants who will supposedly belong to Genosha in some kind of way. Now, here's the thing. Wolverine and Rogue, they were able to find the press gang, and of course it leads into a battle. Now at first our heroes are able to go toe to toe with the 3 members of press gang, except one of the members of press gang is able to call in reinforcement, and of course it's soldiers who belong to this new group known as the Magistrate. And we're going to learn more about this group as the story goes on. But because you have the press gang and also soldiers of the Magistrate, Wolverine and Rogue are easily overrun by this battle, and they are easily knocked out. Now, when it comes to the rest of the X-Men, once you have Psylocke confirmed that she has lost connection to Rogue and Wolverine, you have the rest of the X-Men move in to see what happened to their fellow team members, except they do arrive at the hospital and they are attacked by the same soldiers we saw earlier that helped the press gang take out Wolverine and Rogue. Now, when it comes to the rest of the X-Men, they are able to easily defeat the soldier because we have more X-Men than we did earlier. But when it comes to Psylocke, she reminds us that this is the era where the X-Men were supposedly dead to the entire world. Because remember, when it came to Fall of the Mutants, on live television, you had the X-Men give up their lives to save the world. Now, there was a huge catch, because after doing that, Lady Roma brought them back to life, but the world has no idea the X-Men are alive. And so when it came to the X-Men defeating these soldiers, you had Psylocke make sure they cannot remember who had defeated them, but you had the X-Men disappear as soon as the police arrive. But getting back over to Rogue and Wolverine, you have the press gang find them after knocking them out. And you have press gang realize that they're unable to get a reading on Wolverine and Rogue, which makes them very interesting. And they believe that their boss, their master, will love to study them even more. And so they go out of their way to teleport Rogue and Wolverine, just like Madeline and Jennifer, over to Genosha. Now, once you have Wolverine and Rogue arrive into Genosha, they are surrounded by a bunch of different soldiers who are also working for the government. Now, when it comes to our hero, they do show that they're too much to handle for these soldiers to try to fight them on their own. So the soldiers have somebody else on their side, and that would be a character known as Wipeout. Now, when it comes to Wipeout, like his name says, he has the ability to wipe out your abilities. And the thing is, you cannot get your abilities back until he feels like it. And so when it comes to Rogue and Wolverine, just like that, he takes away their mutant abilities. Now, this is really going to affect Wolverine in later chapters of this story. But now their powers being gone, the soldiers were able to easily grab Rogue and grab Wolverine and transport them over to a nearby prison. On their way over to those prison cells, you have them see Madeline Pryor and also Jennifer. So now they know those two ladies are also in Genosha. Now, we do pick up with a character known as Philip Moro. Now, when it comes to Philip Moro, he is the son to another character known as David Moro. Now, David does have a code name. His code name is the Gingineer. And honestly, I'm not going to sit here in the entire video calling him that. So I'm going to call him by his real name, David. Now, when it comes to Philip and David, they both plays important roles in this storyline, but in different kinds of ways. Now, when it comes to Philip, we can tell right off the bat that his entire life, he always wanted to spend time with his father, but unfortunately, he never had the chance to spend time with his father because his father is always called away for some kind of work thing. So, for example, you have Philip being woken up by one of his father's employees saying, hey, we need your dad at the office for something very important. And of course, that would be Wolverine and also Rogue. But either way, you do have David leave, but the way you have David leave, he can tell that his son is very upset with him. Now, when it comes to David, he wants to know more about Wolverine and Rogue, But the problem is when it comes to the soldiers, when they try to run the fingerprints or blood work or any kind of way to gather information about Wolverine and Rogue, nothing pops up at all. It's kind of like their entire information has been sealed away for unknown reasons. And so when it comes to David, he's kind of like, that's weird. There has to be something about them out there in the world for us to use. Now, we also come to learn their entire system is now beginning to delete files on the different mutants they have in this prison. Now, they believe this virus came from Rogue and Wolverine when they were teleported over to Genosha. But when it comes to David, he finds our two characters very interesting, but at the same time, he is very concerned about them being there. Now, when it comes to the rest of the X-Men, they have no idea what happened to Wolverine and Rogue or where they are at. And so they have to go to a prison in Sydney to talk to the same soldiers they had defeated earlier. Now, when I say talk, I really mean more of you have Psylocke using her abilities to gather information from their minds to learn where in the world Rogue and Wolverine could possibly be at. Except once you have Psylocke do that, well, she gets very angry because she learns what's happening over there to Genosha, and she tells the rest of the team what's happening over there. But when it comes to Psylocke, you can see how angry she is because now she knows what's possibly happening, not possibly, what is happening with the mutants over in that country. But either way, our heroes know they have to go there to save their teammates. Now, we do get one page, really just two panels, that kind of tell us we're getting very close into X-Men Inferno, because you do have the X-Men being able to use the mutant known as Gateway to teleport across the world. And so once you have the mutants get back to their base, but then leave again to head over to Genosha, as soon as they leave, we go down to the basement level of their new base, where we see their computer screens and we see a demon on there we met earlier in our coverage. And his name is, and I'm going to literally mispronounce his name so much, Nizareth. Now, when it comes to this demon, it seems like he's looking for somebody that he is working alongside with. But the question is, who? Now, you already know it most likely could be Madeline Pryor, but we have no confirmation with that just yet. But then we have to jump back over to Philip. Now, you have Philip getting back home to his house, except when he gets back home, he sees that his neighbors are getting arrested. Now, here's the catch, because his neighbors are the parents to his fiance, and his fiance is Jennifer, and we saw her earlier with Madeline Pryor. Now he begins to freak out because he's wondering, why in the world are they getting arrested? Does that mean someone in their family is a mutant? And so far in the story arc, we now know that bad things happen to mutants if you are one in this country. But the problem is Philip is unable to get answers about what's happening with his fiance's family. But then we have to shift our focus over to Rogue. Now, this is a very hard thing to talk about because when it comes to Rogue, when she was being transported over to her prison cell, well, unfortunately, you had a few soldiers try to have their way with her. Not really try, they did. Now, when it comes to Rogue, she begins to withdraw herself into her own mind, away from the world. Except when she does that in her mind, she begins to battle against the other psyches of people that she had touched over the years. Now, at first, these different psyches are trying to, what seems to kill her off in her own mind, except she is then saved by Carol Danvers. Now, you already know this is a very huge callback because she's the reason why Rogue has super strength and the ability to fly. Now, here's the thing. Carol Danvers has military training, and so you have this psyche telling Rogue, let me take over your body, because if I'm able to do that, then I should be able to break you free, but also Wolverine. And the thing is, because Wolverine and Rogue both lost their abilities, let's not forget, Wolverine's ability is his healing factor, and that is really crucial because the metal inside his body is now beginning to poison him. But at the same time, when he does get beat up by the different people in his organization, he can't recover like he used to. And so it comes to Carol Danvers' psyche being able to take over Rogue's body to break her free, but to also break Wolverine free as well. But then we jump over to Philip. Now, when it comes to Philip, he wants answers. He wants to know what happened to his fiance. And his dad says, dude, your fiance was a mutant. And this is where we learn what happens to mutants over here in Genosha. They're slaves. As soon as word gets out that you are a mutant, you are captured and processed to become a slave and used as a way to somehow support the country. And so when it comes to David, he tells Philip, listen, when it came to Jennifer's father, he had her paper switched with somebody else to make it look like she was just a regular human. But in reality, she was a mutant. But when the other child died, you had people begin to look into her death to realize that she was never a mutant. But on top of that, they found out it was Jennifer's father who said she was, as a way of lying to cover for his daughter. And so he got arrested for lying, but your fiance, as the law says, if she's a mutant, she has to become a slave. She has to work. Unfortunately, my hands are tied, Philip. I can't help your fiance out, but you'll be okay because I believe you'll find somebody else to love. And David just moves on with his life. But then we get another hint that we are getting into X-Men Inferno, because then we pick up with Nazareth finding Madeline Pryor and appearing on another computer screen, asking her, hey, I've been looking for you. Is this a good time to talk to you? And she says later. But right after he leaves, the computer screens explode. And now we're left to believe that something big is coming, we already know what is, down the road for Madeline. Now, some time has passed by, and we do pick up with some soldiers trying their best to board an aircraft that is currently flying over the Indian Ocean. Now, here's the thing, because they believe that Rogue and Wolverine are on the aircraft, except they are not. It's actually a trap. You see, as soon as they try to board the aircraft, it blows up in their face. Now, luckily, the soldiers were able to get back to theirs safe and unharmed. When they report back to their boss, David, he's wondering, what was the point of that? To keep us distracted long enough so they're able to do something else behind our backs? Like, what was the purpose of the entire aircraft just blowing up in our face? Now, when it comes to David, he's also kind of ticked off that it's been a few days now or a few hours, whatever, and they still have not been able to get any kind of information about Wolverine and also Rogue. But he does say, listen, I do know that that one mutant, Wolverine, has a healing factor, and thanks to Wipeout, that's gone. And so sooner or later, he is going to die because he's basically poisoned with his own metal being inside his body at the moment. But now we pick up with Wolverine and Rogue just in the middle of Genosha. Now, this section really gives us a great look about the idea of how this country is really like when it comes to humans and mutants. Now, humans, they're okay. They're living their normal lives. But mutants, like I said earlier, they're slaves. Now, in some areas, they are used as a way to help out the economy. And in some areas, they are used to just clean up the streets of Genosha. Now, here's the thing, because you have Wolverine seeing a commercial that is most likely being played in other countries. And this commercial is kind of lying to the world by saying, hey, come here to our perfect country. Everybody loves it here. But in reality, that's not true, because mutants cannot love to be there if they are slaves. Now, we kind of find out that mutants are technically mind-wiped into behaving in a way of being submissive to follow orders. And so when it comes to mutants, when a human complains about them, they don't attack the humans. Instead, they go out of their way to please that human that they have upset. Now, when it comes to Wolverine and Rogue, they go to a nearby bar where most of the soldiers of Genosha go to. And the reason why they're going to this bar is to grab a few passes, high security passes, that will allow them to access different buildings of the magistrate. Now, while in the bar, they see Philip. Now, this is Philip in his feelings, but at the same time, he's a tad bit drunk, where he goes to the bar requesting another drink. But the bartender says, nah, man, you're cut off. You had too much. But he believes that he has the right to demand another drink. But it does lead into him getting into an argument with the soldiers of the magistrate over the topic of mutants. And this is where we can see that when it comes to Philip, he's on the side of the mutants, not the humans. He believes that mutants should be free. And that is going to be very crucial for later parts of this video. But you do have Philip getting into a fight with the soldiers of the magistrate. Now, while fighting, you have Wolverine and Rogue being able to grab those passes. Now, while they're trying to leave, you do see Philip getting thrown out of the bar. But then you have the soldiers realize who they just got in a fight with, their boss's son. Now, you would think, okay, this is our boss's son, we should back off. Instead, they don't. They say, you know what? He's knocked out. Why don't we go out of our way to teach him a lesson? Why not go ahead and put him on the mutant train? Now, we jump back over to David, and we see David meeting up with Jennifer. Now, when it comes to their conversation, it's really her kind of trying her best to understand what's happening to her. Like, why in the world is she being processed? Now, at first, I thought that she had no idea that she was not a mutant, but then I realized she knew, but she thought that she'd be protected because her father had worked for the government. He was part of the government. But because her father lied, and also because she's a mutant, she has to go through the process. Now, she is wondering, will she keep her ability, the ability to heal people? And this is where we find out when it comes to David, that sometimes he'll take a mutant and change their ability to something else as a way to help out the country. And so when it comes to Jennifer, he says, we don't need your powers to heal. Instead, we need you, someone else out there in the mines, to mine different rocks in those mines. And so we are going to change your ability. And for Jennifer, she can't believe what she is hearing. But then she's wondering, wait, hey, what about Philip, her fiance? And for David, he said, listen, Philip understands what's happening to you, and hopefully he'll move on. But then we jump over to Madeline Pryor. Now, when it comes to Madeline, they're getting ready to send her to the mutant camp. Now, when it comes to Madeline, they have no idea if she is a mutant or not. But again, they still got some weird readings. Now, you do have Madeline ask the question, hey, real quick, do mutants have children? And they tell her, no. Mutants are not allowed to have children at all, being on Genosha. But don't worry, you will not even care for children at all, because now you are about to get mind wiped. And they have a mutant that has the ability to do it. But this is going to be another example of us getting into Inferno very soon. Because you do have the rest of the X-Men arrive. And as soon as they arrive, they begin to fight against some of the soldiers of the magistrate. But when it comes to Psylocke, she does feel a very powerful psychic scream. And that scream came from Madeline Pryor. Now, when we jump back over to where she is at, where she was in that room with all those different scientists, we kind of find out they all have been murdered. I mean, they have been butchered up by Madeline Pryor. And we're kind of left to wonder, how in the world was she able to do that? But again, this is just an example of us getting into Inferno. Now we have to jump back over to Wolverine and also Rogue. Now remember, they're trying to save the life or try to help out Philip, who's on the train right now unconscious, heading over to Mutant Town, basically the mutant camp, because right now the soldiers are trying to teach him a lesson. Now Rogue and Wolverine, they step in to grab Philip to hopefully get him off the train, except they're then stopped by some more soldiers, wondering why in the world they're on the train for. Now when it comes to Wolverine and Rogue, they have no idea that these two guys are escapees who are currently wanted. Instead, they believe our heroes are also soldiers. And so you have our hero, so the soldier, hey man, listen, we got David's son here. And some soldiers thought it would be a cool idea to put him on the train. And so we're right now trying to get him back home before our boss gets very upset. Except you have this soldier tell Rogue and also Wolverine, nah. Listen very carefully. Go report this to our superior, just in case, so that none of us will get in trouble for this at all. Because I'm pretty sure the boss's son being on the train could have some heads rolling very soon. Now, while you have Wolverine and Rogue doing what they're told to do, they do see more mutants being mistreated. And when it comes to Wolverine, he says, my goal is to make sure this place change before I die. Now we jump back over to Madeline, and when we do, we kind of get a better look of what exactly happened to those people who were trying to probe her mind. And so we kind of find out that she technically punished them from entering her mind. And the thing was, when it came to her punishment, it was really more her just torturing them with her mind being connected to theirs. Now, this is really a huge moment because now we see that Madeline has powers. But the question is now, is Madeline a mutant or is she something else? And so when it comes to the playback of what exactly happened in her mind, we see at first she does pretend to be this innocent young girl. But then as the feedback continues on, we see that she begins to change into her Goblin Queen form. And this is really huge because this is just another example of us getting into X-Men Inferno. But when it comes to the feedback of what happened in her mind, we see that she had tortured every single person who was part of that assignment to probe her mind. At the end, she warned them that you guys had just started something. You had just ignited the Inferno. Now, when it comes to David, he watched that feedback. He's freaking out because what he just saw was just so messed up. And he goes out of his way to confront Madeline. Now, when he does, Madeline is completely different now. It's kind of like, yes, when it came to her probing their mind, well, they unlocked a new persona inside of her, a whole new kind of person, because now she's dark and just straightforward with all of her answers. And when it comes to David, he wants to know more about her because now they realize she's not a mutant. She has to be something else because when it came to Wipeout, he was unable to cancel her abilities because he did not detect any kind of mutant abilities inside of her. Now you do have the two characters get into a debate about mutants being slaves, but their conversation is really, interrupted by one of his soldiers telling him, hey, we got word about your son, but also the two people that you have been looking for, Wolverine and Rogue. And so we jump over to them. Now, when it comes to Rogue and Wolverine, like we saw earlier, they were supposed to walk Philip over to their supposed superior. But instead, you have the three characters look around and see how messed up the camp is for mutants. Now, for Wolverine and Rogue, they're not really surprised seeing this because, hey, you know what? They have been a mutant for a while and they have ran into so many different kinds of scenarios where mutants have been mistreated. But when it comes to Philip, he's surprised. He's like, oh my God. This is how mutants live inside my country? I had no idea. Now, for me personally, I'm kind of like, how did you not know? Because no offense, I feel like everyone knows that mutants live in some kind of messed up camp because the mutants are again just slaves to the humans inside this country. But either way, you didn't have Wolverine and Rogue get confronted by a bunch of soldiers, and you have the leader of the group tell our heroes, hey, your cover is blown, we know who you are, and we are going to take you back to where you guys belong, to the prison. Now, getting back over to Madeline, you have Madeline inside her prison cell, and she watches Jennifer walk by, and she tries her best to kind of keep the hope inside of Jennifer just long enough until everything can possibly work out. Now, when it comes to Madeline, once she's able to see that Jennifer lost all the hope inside of her and they see her taking her away somewhere else, you have Madeline tell the guards that she is going to enjoy the idea of watching them burn. Now, we do shift our focus back over to Philip, who's with Wolverine and also with Rogue, as you had the three characters being confronted by Philip's father, David. Now, this section right here really shows the differences in their opinions when it comes to how mutants should be handled. When it comes to David, they should use the mutants as a way to keep the country strong, because compared to other countries, Genosha is doing well in so many different areas. But when it comes to Philip, it's still not okay because mutants are slaves. They're being forced to do things against their own free will. Unfortunately, they're also not able to enjoy the benefits of this country doing so well. So how's it fair for the humans to be okay, but not the mutants? And look at you, Father. You are feeding into the idea that humans and mutants cannot live together, that mutants are dangerous, that mutants should be controlled. And humans are gaining more hatred towards the mutant race in this country because of you and this government. And he's right, but their conversation is interrupted when you have Wolverine and Rogue initiate another escape. But luckily for them, because you have the X-Men arrive. Now, when the X-Men arrive, just like that, you have the X-Men, Wolverine, Rogue working together to escape. Now, we jump over to Madeline. Now, you're probably wondering why she is naked. Okay, she had a skin outfit the magistrate gave her, and she took it off. So now she's just naked for the rest of the book until like the very end. Either way, when it comes to Madeline, she finds a room that's full of babies. These are mutant babies. Now, earlier I said mutants are not allowed to have babies. That is actually true, but not completely. They are allowed to have babies, but they're forced to have babies. And those babies are going to be raised up to become part of the mutant race that helps to make Genosha better, to bring them inside the workforce of the government. And so when it comes to Madeline, her goal is to free them. But then she's confronted by David. Now, when it comes to David, he wants to shoot her because he realized there's something wrong with her. She is completely different and beginning to scare him. But before he is able to pull that trigger, he is stopped by the X-Men, or really just Philip. Philip jumped in just in time to save Madeline's life. But now the question is, where do we go from here? Because now the X-Men are free, Madeline is free, and most likely every other mutant inside that prison is also free as well. Now the story does wrap up very quickly, where you do have Philip tell the X-Men that he's going to begin the process of trying to make the country a better place, to make the government better for not just the humans, but also for the mutants as well. And you also have the X-Men warn David to get his act together, to use his power in the government to begin the process of making this country a better place for both humans and mutants. Now, I want to focus on Madeline and Havoc because at the very beginning of this video, these two characters were not together. And really, we saw Havoc say, you know what, it's kind of weird I'm so concerned for Madeline. But then out of nowhere, she calls him her lover. And they make out just like that. They're madly in love and they're acting like they've been in love for a while. And it kind of shows that Madeline is beginning to change. Now, let's not forget here that technically, Madeline is still the wife to Cyclops, who is Havoc's brother. Yeah, let's not forget that. But also, Cyclops is with Jean Grey right now on X Factor, so the drama continues. But either way, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.